Hey kids, check it out! Satan's here! The other week, the most remarkable thing happened to me. I received a package in the mail from Lichtlaerm Audio containing this speaker, the LCFR 150. If you didn't know it yet, Lichtlaerm Audio are releasing their own amplifier this year. It's called the Prometheus, which I immediately pre-ordered, and they'll be offering matching cabs with that. And these cabs will be loaded with these speakers, the LCFR 150 that Lichtlaerm Audio developed together with Fein Acoustics in the United Kingdom. Now, this particular speaker was actually provided to me by Daniel, the man behind Lichtlaerm Audio. We're internet buddies. We talk about amps, speakers, and the taste of electrolytic capacitors now and then. And I'm not telling you this to flex, well, maybe the tiniest little bit, but in the interest of complete transparency. I'm not being paid for this video, but I'm undeniably biased. I like the company, I like the guy, and much more important than that, I respect the guy. All that being said though, I did not treat this speaker any differently than any of the other speakers I've tested here so far. Yes, I've already shot the playthrough. Usually I film this bit first and then do the playthrough, but in this case I couldn't wait. And there's no EQing, there's nothing going on in post. What you hear is what you get. The LCFR 150 went into my Marshall 1960 AV cab next to me here on this side. Next to a Celestion Vintage 30 from the year 2000. Both speakers are an 8 ohm. This one's a good V30, it's one of my favorites. Both speakers were mic'd up with modern Shure SM57s. The Vintage 30 is sweet spot to me, where the dust cap meets the cone, and the LCFR was mic'd up in its sweet spot for the first part of the video, and later in the video I move it over to the same relative position that the Shure SM57 was in for the Vintage 30. Why these two approaches? Well, one thing, I want to show you how good the LCFR can sound. I want to show it to you from its best side, but I also want to give you an apples to apples comparison so you know how different they actually sound to each other. On most of the speakers I've tested here so far, the sweet spot, at least to my ears, was either in the exact same position as it was on the Vintage 30, or maybe a finger's width further outside from the center of the speaker. The LCFR 150 though is different. The sweet spot to my ears was right smack in the middle. Right in the center of the speaker, in the middle of the cone. And I usually give you a few IRs of the speakers in the V30 for you to do your own testing at home. In this case though, I've sort of felt a bit of a moral dilemma because the speaker was provided to me. Lichtlaerm Audio is a very small company and the speaker isn't even out yet. So making and sharing IRs of this speaker kind of felt like a bit of a dick move to me. But I found a very clever way out of this predicament, and I did that by asking Daniel from Lichtlaerm Audio if he'd be okay with that. And he gave me his blessing. So you will receive 4 IRs in total. 1 of the Vintage 30 in its sweet spot and 3 for the LCFR 150. 1 for its sweet spot right in the middle of the speaker, 1 in the same position as the mic was for the V30, and 1 in between. Now, I can already hear you screaming, hypocrite, you said you weren't going to treat this speaker any differently. And that's true, I'm not treating the speaker any differently due to the source it came from, but I find that the uniqueness of this speaker warrants a few more IRs. See, on a Vintage 30, the usable band for miking up with a Shure SM57 is pretty narrow in my opinion. You have about 1.5 centimeters where within that you can move the Shure SM57 and get a halfway usable tone out of that. Too far on the inside and it's unusably bright, too far on the outside and it's kind of dull sounding. I think some people call that beamy. The Vintage 30 has this death beam and I don't find the LCFR has that. I find its high end is far less sensitive to where the Shure SM57 is positioned, and I think adding 1 IR in between really showcases that. And that's why there's 1 extra here. Alright, I won't keep you any longer. It's time for the playthrough. If you want, after that, I'll be talking a bit more about the speaker and leaving you with my final thoughts. Enjoy. I fucked that one up. Okay, I'm going to move the mic to the same spot as the V30. I want to try one more thing with the LCFR speaker because it's very different than all the other speakers I've tested so far. On the other speakers, the sweet spot was either in the same position as it was for the Vintage 30 or further outside from the cone. On the LCFR, it was the exact opposite. I found the sweet spot in the Marshall cab was pretty much right in the center. So it's a much smoother sounding speaker, though in that mic position I didn't find it lacked anything. I thought it sounded very balanced, so it's different in a good way. And that made me think I'd really like to experience how it sounds in the room. The problem is I only have one, and I have 4x12s and 2x12, so I always hear it mixed in with a different speaker, usually a V30. And that doesn't help me an awful lot, and it doesn't help you an awful lot either. So I've come up with one additional improvised test. I'm going to put the LCFR into this Zilla 212 cab here and disconnect the speaker on the other side and run this as an improvised, oversized, offset 1x12. I'm going to reamp a track through that and then take the LCFR out and put the Vintage 30 from the Marshall cab in the same position and reamp the same track. I'm going to use this beautiful Austrian Audio OC818 as a room mic. I'm going to set it maybe a meter and a half away from the cab just to gauge how these speakers fill the room. I'm very curious to find out how the LCFR performs there. Now, I don't know much about speaker design. In fact, I probably don't know anything about it. At the same time, I imagine it's a difficult task to design a speaker that sounds as good as the Celestion Vintage 30 for modern rock and metal music without being a derivative of the same. But in my opinion, Lichtlaerm Audio have managed to do just that. Now, as I'm filming this, there's no spec sheet out for the speaker. But I can tell you just from looking at it and picking it up that it's definitely a different design than the Vintage 30. For one thing, it's lighter than the Vintage 30. The other thing is it has no doping on the speaker suspension, and based on the size of the dust cap and the non-visibility of those glue blobs here, I believe it uses a bigger voice coil as well. I could be wrong about that, it could just be the dust cap, but I'd be surprised if it was a 44mm dust cap. It's likely larger. The only other things I can tell you is what's written on the label here, and that is that it's an 8 ohm speaker. It has a resonance frequency of 65 Hz and an impressive power handling capability of 150 watts, so it's definitely 112able. One little heads up though, the frame that is used is different than the Celestion frames. I noticed on my front-loading cabs that the cutouts were slightly too small, so on the Zilla cab there, I had to use a bit of sandpaper to enlarging the cutout a bit, and that's not a big deal, that's easily done, but it's something you should pay attention to, because if the speaker frame here isn't in contact with the baffle completely, but the speaker is actually making contact at the edge here, and you fasten the mounting bolts too tightly, you could bend the speaker frame and thus damage or even destroy your speaker, and you don't want to do that, so keep an eye on that. As for the sound, I think this is my favorite speaker I've tested so far. I'm not sure if I prefer to the Celestion Vintage 30 just yet, I think I need more time with that, but of the speakers I've compared to the Vintage 30, this is definitely my favorite, followed by the Mamser 30, which is also manufactured by Fane, incidentally. In fact, I'm even considering throwing out the rare 16 ohm Celestion Vintage 30s out of my Marshall 1960 TV and converting it to an 8 ohm cab by putting 2 or even 4 of these in there. I like the speaker that much. Do check out the IRs, I think they turned out particularly well. Special thanks to Daniel and everybody at Lichtlaerm Audio for providing this speaker. What did you think of the LCFR 150? Would you like me to shoot it out against other speakers or hear it in some different cabs? Let me know in the comments, I'll meet you there to hang out. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye!